let's go
Okay.
ahead and record on this one. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know where Megan is. Let me just see if I can just grab her email real quick just to make sure. Maybe I'll just send her. Let's see. Okay. I don't think I have her email. So let's just go ahead and get started. Because I really don't think I have her email. Okay. All right. Well, so Michelle, why don't we just start with you, since you've been on, some of the other calls, and let's just, since this is our last session together, let's just talk a little bit about anything that you've taken from at least these last the last two calls that we've had. Is there anything that, just to kind of even get Liz up to speed, is there anything that's been an aha or a takeaway from the last couple of times that we've met? Anything that you see for yourself or anything that you're struggling with right now?
We have 3 sessions total, right?
Yes, I think today is
The last one, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to join on the first session, and
Right.
then the second session I had a conflict with. So I think it's been almost 2 or 3 weeks since we've.
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking to like what's going on in my life. Oh, it's Megan. Hey.
Yay. Hi, Megan.
Hi. How's everyone?
Good. Good. Just getting
Good.
started.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
No worries.
Speaking to kind of like what's going on in my world right now, I mentioned that I was on that sabbatical. I am on this sabbatical, but I am now officially in the 4-week countdown. So I'm like trying to get my mind in this space of like, all right, you've done all these things for your mental health, your physical health, your life, your priorities, all this great juicy stuff. How are you able to like routinize it in such a way to where I transition into big tech chaos again?
Yes.
With all of these beautiful boundaries and habits that I've built. So like that's while still having some family obligations that take a lot of time. And that's very much where my mind is at, is how do I like proactively protect myself and my worth and happiness as I jump into the next.
Yes. That's right. Okay, beautiful. So here's what I want to say about that for all of us here on this call today. All right. So our minds are hardwired, rooted in protecting us from fear and for protecting us from danger, really. Okay. So hi there. Sorry. So tell me, what is your fear?
My fear is that I am going to fall right back into all of the bad habits that made me feel so burnout and unhappy and stressed and sick, literally physically sick, and all the grossies. Yeah.
Got it. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's focus on that for a moment. So all the old behaviors that you used to engage in that literally made you physically sick. If we're looking at this through the perspective of your automatic mind, that is all about trying to ward off, I'm going to say what she perceives. I call that automatic mind, your inner critic mind. I call it her. Okay. So she's rooted in protecting you from danger. Okay. So by over-functioning, what do you think she's trying to protect you from? What's she trying to control in terms of how life is going?
What are the protective mechanisms trying to protect against?
Correct.
The pain, right?
Yeah. What pain?
Like the overwhelm, disappointment, stress.
Okay. let's just keep going with this for a minute. So let's just focus on the disappointment. All
Mhm.
right. So here's her mentality. I'm going to overfunction. I'm going to make sure everybody's happy. I'm going to make sure I'm hitting all of these goals. I'm going to make sure to control something so that this doesn't happen. Does that make sense to you, Michelle?
Mhm.
So what's the this? What are you trying to make sure doesn't happen in all of those old habits?
I think I might need a prompting from a different angle. I don't think I'm quite locking in on the answer you're seeking.
All right. Megan, Liz, anything that do you guys understand? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? And if you don't, it's okay. Any thoughts?
I think, or at least maybe the way that I would ask it a bit more broadly, it would be just to drill down on like, what are all the big feelings at large? And then kind of going through them from like, what is their genesis? And also where do they bring you and how do you respond to them? So I would say like, if the feeling's anxiety, if the feeling's excitement, if the feeling is fear, if the feeling is pressure, where does it come from? What are you then going to do with it? Like I would maybe go almost like feeling by feeling instead of saying like, how do I take everything that I've learned from sabbatical and like make sure I'm not going back into work, forgetting it, not honoring it, not using it. I think that feels probably too big. So I would think more like a little tighter of like, okay, I'm in this countdown. How do I feel about it? And now how do I address each of those feelings? I feel like that will be a more manageable way instead of like, how do I make sure when I go back to big tech world, I'm not forgetting all of the growth that I did. So not just like the time off, because sabbatical is not really time off, right? You're doing a lot of work. So remembering that and thinking about what that work is, I think on a feeling by feeling basis. So I don't know if that is what your prompt was, probably not, but that was kind of where my thinking was going.
Great. That's great. Great, Liz. Thank you. Thank you. Anything for you, Megan?
I'm not sure because I'm sort of like thinking about this and I'm like thinking about some of my, this like relates a lot to me, Michelle, and sort of like my situation. So I may have taken it too far to like what is going on with me. But I think what I'd be thinking is like, I mean, I'm sure like your days are already busy, right? Like your day's already full. And then you're like, and then I'm gonna add back in work. And so like maybe some of it is like this, like maybe you don't believe that you can like actually make an impact at work or get the work done in probably less amount of time that you want to give to work. You know, like maybe you can carve out, you know, a certain amount of time, but like it's going to look different than it was before you went back to sabbatical if you want to keep maintaining these other things that you've built into your life that take time and that are a priority. That's sort of what I am like,
great.
Sort of like thinking about sometimes too about like how like, well, if I add like, you know, one more like child in my family, I don't know that I always believe that I can like cut, like, where do I cut back, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Would it be helpful if I spoke to the very, very specific fear? Like I can crystallize it and describe it so then we can like dissect. Because I'm like, oh, I'm scared that I had all this good stuff and that good stuff is going away, but that doesn't actually tell you anything.
Great.
So quite specifically, my biggest gift that I've given myself in this sabbatical is really great health boundaries. And by that, I mean like waking up at a certain time, eating a certain way, drinking water, going on walks, doing all the things that they tell you to do, right? For your mental and spiritual and physical health. And the very crystallized fear that I have is that I'm going to start waking up at 8:30 for a 9 o'clock call because I'm so tired, that I'm going to eat like crap, that I'm going to not rest at night
Yep.
because I like have to keep working, or at least I'm still thinking about it, and I stay up late and don't get restful sleep. So that Amazon is going to eat up the boundaries that I've set in place to stay healthy physically. Like, I don't even, to be frank, I don't even really, I'm not that too concerned about performing at work
Mm-hmm.
because my tendency is to overperform and underserve myself.
Yes.
So I'm scared that I'm going to fail myself and my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. So I love what you just said. You said my tendency is to overperform and underserve myself. Okay. Now, I would say, right, that's at the, what you just said, that's at the heart of not setting all of these beautiful boundaries that you've been setting for yourself these past few months. Am I correct in saying that?
Mhm.
Okay. So overperforming and underserving ourselves. Okay. Here's the bigger picture. Everything that we do, everything in life really boils down to, we do what we do because of how we think it's going to make us feel. Okay. So overperforming, it's automatic. Okay. But you overperform automatically. We could say subconsciously, right? You overperform because of how somewhere deep down you think, right? If I overperform, somehow there's going to be a positive result from that. Could be a sneaky, underhanded positive result. Does that make sense? Otherwise, we wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
So right, so we're kind of trying to get to the blind spot here, and I'm right, and we're all seeing ourselves in Michelle. Yes. Yeah. Right. Because this is what we do as women. Okay. We focus out there, right? Whether we're doing it with our kids, we're doing it with our spouses, we're doing it with our employers, we're doing it with our friends, we're doing it with our family, right? Where our focus is out there, right? It's on whoever that is. Does that make sense to you guys? So your history, Michelle, of overperforming, what do you think you were trying to impact in your overperforming at work? Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
Okay.
What was I trying to do?
Yeah.
I mean, it was very conscious. It was like, if I overperform, I will get promoted faster and I'll have all of these perceived like security, more money, more love from my boss, all of that. So like all of the warmth and goodness will result from overperforming.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you're putting things, right? Our warmth and goodness is going to come out there. It's not going to come from me setting my own boundaries, taking care of myself, loving myself, right? Being grateful for, all that's already in my life. No, I need to my love, my worth, my value comes out there. Right? Which is exactly what our automatic mind has us think. Does this make sense to all of you? Okay. So what Michelle is talking about, right? I'm afraid I'm going to just go back to this overperforming. Okay. What we really need to understand about ourselves is really, why do we do what we do? We do all of these things that we know are unhealthy. It's not the way we, right? We keep making these decisions, we keep acting this way, we keep thinking this way, we keep doing the same stuff over and over again and expecting different results. You've heard that before. Yes. Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? So can we all see, Michelle, what this sabbatical has, right, given you the room and the space to see is that maybe your overperforming is a habit that maybe was with you even way before you started with Amazon. Is it something, Michelle, that you can see that you've actually been doing for ever?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Right. Okay. So here's what's interesting, guys. When we then want to go to, okay, well, I'm just gonna do these things differently, right? But without really understanding our automatic mind and all that she says, right? And all the fear and doubt and uncertainty that she whips up once she starts her automatic ranting again, right? Once those thoughts of, oh my God, my boss isn't going to love me anymore. Oh my God, I'm not going to get that promotion. Oh my God, they're going to be disappointed in me. Are these, what do you think are those thoughts, Michelle?
Sorry, can you repeat what you last said? My audio went out. It caught a Bluetooth thing.
No
So I lost
problem.
the last
Yeah.
statement.
No problem. What did I say? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No, what I was talking about was, let's just look at what your mind says, right? When you're faced with that fear, oh my God, my boss isn't going to love me anymore. Oh my God, I'm not going to get that promotion fast enough. Oh my God, I'm not going to get, that money that I need, right? What is your automatic mind? What are those thoughts that show up?
Well, there's panic, right? And then it's tied to self-worth. Like, oh, there must be something wrong with me if money, love, validation, right, are not achieved to whatever specific standard.
Yes. Yeah. Megan and Liz, what do you see in Michelle? So she just said something so profound, right? About that her very self-worth gets tied into those external results, right? My boss's feelings towards me, my promotion, money. What do you see for yourselves?
So I see two things. First of all, when we were working with Maya last month, for me personally, I feel like I did a lot of talking with and coaching with her on finding worth not tied to those like rigid items. So I'm in a fundraising role right now and making sure that you don't tie how much money you raise to how well you're doing in your job. So it's asking different questions. So it's like, was I a good team member? Did I get creative? Did I express my feelings? Like bigger questions than did I hit my goal? Did I get the promotion? A lot easier said than done. But as you were just talking about that, I was definitely brought back to that place, which I think is very important. And just reminding myself, and I know every industry is different, and working at Amazon or tech or a job that probably is and I'm speaking out of school, but probably very metrics driven, is different than documentary film production or government affairs or some of this other stuff that I'm doing that's a lot more subjective in its grading. But if I can divert for a second, where I really was seeing a lot of myself, Michelle, when you were like, let me just tell you straight up what is making me nervous. So I guess just to like really get personal here for a second, I, for the last 2 years, tried really hard to adopt a self-care routine that could jive with a work routine. It is really fucking hard. And, for people who are like, you can do it all, you can have it all. I really do think that's bullshit. It comes with so much sacrifice. And Megan, I think you might be, Joanna, I don't know your background, but Megan, I know you are a mom. And so I'm sure once you even bring kids into the picture or a kid into the picture, it's like that whole, you can have it all and balance it all is like even more so out the window than I can only imagine. But for me, Michelle, I think it's also like, I notice when I don't do the routines and the things that I've set up, like I watch myself break out when I forget to get the 8 hours of sleep, forget to drink, the few liters of water, like all the small things that I thought I could do to make the bigger stuff possible. Like it's not taking 2 hours out of the day to meditate. It's not taking a vacation once a month. It's not those bigger things. It's like, did you write in your journal? Did you get the sleep you need? Did you drink the water and eat the food that you thought? And so it feels like finding those self-care things that are realistic and not aspirational. So kind of taking the like exciting, sexy part out of like, I'm going to have this amazing routine, and just saying like, what are the very practical things that are possible? And as you were talking, I was thinking like, for me, when I don't do those things now, I notice them so much. And then having to get back on the wagon, which is often really hard when work gets super crazy, is really hard and often really frustrating. And so I've been feeling that a lot over the last couple of weeks. And so while I have no solution or guidance, which is why I am the mentee and not the coach, I think it takes a lot of time and practice and discipline, and a lot of work. So I sympathize with you a lot because I'm there also in a very different way. I am right where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love what you just said, Liz, because I have 3 kids. I wholeheartedly agree with you, right? And I don't care if you have no kids, like when you say we can't have it all, okay, here's really what we can't have. We can't try to control how people think of us, whether we're getting validation from them, whether we're getting our worthiness from them, whether we're getting our love from them, trying to control all of that, right? Trying to get our worthiness from, what our title is and what our money is and what our status is. We can't do that and live a life that honors ourselves. Now, here's the ironic thing. When we actually learn how to continue to unhook ourselves from getting our value and validation out there, when we stop trying to control other people's thoughts and opinions and behaviors, and we stop trying to quicken the timeline, we actually step into our most powerful selves, right? Because now if we're unhooking ourselves from all of these things that we are trying to control and we actually have no control over, right? And we're saying, you know what? I'm actually carving out my life so that it honors and supports all that I need foundationally. Now we start acting in alignment with something different, right? In other words, we start saying no where we need to say no. we start really being clear on what we do want and what we don't want. We start being really clear on, you know what? I'm never going to please this person. I'm never going to be good enough for this person. I'm going to let go of trying to bust my ass trying to be good enough for this person, right? I'm going to do the things that support me living my best life. Because here's what I will say. Women do get stuck. Sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. Staying stuck in roles, titles, careers, professions, relationships, right? All sorts of things. We get stuck trying to, right? Keep trying to control certain things and not recognizing, to your point, Michelle, right? Just how burnt out and fried and unhealthy we are. And done over time. I mean, the ramifications are, sometimes we make ourselves physically sick. So, I love what you're saying, Liz, about like how hard it is to, honor the self-care. But I think it goes beyond, okay, we've just got to honor the self-care, right? Where it starts, what it's rooted in, is really learning how to unhook ourselves from this external source of validation and enoughness that we've been spinning in for our whole lives. Right? That's the mirror that comes front and center when we're burnt out and fried and overwhelmed. And I get it. Listen, there's a lot of buzz out there about self-care. I'm all for self-care. But honoring self-care is a byproduct of something much deeper. Does that make sense?
It does make sense for me, like in my core, that makes a lot of sense. However, because I have spent quarantine in particular and the beginning of COVID trying to make it work, that didn't come from a place of pressure from outside sources. It came from a desire from me. And so it's less about wanting to adopt self-care because other people think I should look a certain way, feel a certain way, act a certain way. It's like, now that I've seen what it's like to get 8 hours of sleep when I used to get 4 or 5, now I can't know that. And I want that for me.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, like about the kind of like, not that you're making a historical reference, but I think, that you're talking about like the background behind these desires. I do think for a lot of people, they can come from a nasty place or a scared place or something like that. But I think on the other hand, when you want that pressure, because you're giving it to yourself for like trying to build a life or a routine or a practice that you yourself want. I happen to think that kind of pressure is okay, but maybe I'm off on that. So I'd actually love your thoughts on that side of the coin.
Yeah. So do you mean when you mean pressure to stay in your healthy routines?
Yeah, that you were saying, like this idea of self-care, comes from a place of like an inner critic or someone else, an outside force telling us.
No, let me explain what I mean. No, the lack of self-care comes from the inner critic automatic, right? Because remember, because your inner critic is all right. That's where the overfunctioning comes in. So no, this is what I mean. Your self-care becomes a byproduct of honoring your authentic self.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So rather than saying like, oh, I'm putting pressure on myself to honor my self-care. No, I'm choosing me
Mm,
over what right other people are going to think.
yeah.
I'm choosing me over some made up arrival point. I've got to get to this point in my career by such and such a time. I'm choosing me. I'm taking the steps towards my goals, but at the same time, I'm consciously choosing me. Does that make sense?
Definitely for me.
Yeah. Megan, what's showing up for you in this conversation? What do you see?
I do think the more, it's almost like you sort of get like addicted to the things that are really healthy and supportive. And I do feel like sometimes it starts off as like more like a chore, like, like I have to set it on the calendar. I have to like make myself do it. And then like the more and more you do it, at least in my own experience, is like I sort of get addicted to some of the things that like feel really good every day. And then it's almost I feel like I'm not totally there, but I almost feel like it's much easier for them to just become non-negotiables. Like now that I've been working on this for like over 2 years, there's definitely some things that they just feel like that's how it's always been. Like I don't mean I can give specific examples, but like there's no way I would go back. I think the other thing that's hard, or it's something that I struggle with, is that sometimes I feel like I'm the only one doing this at work. And so like when you see other people, like because I'm one of my things is that like I don't start work before 9 a.m. Like no phone calls. Like I try really hard not to look at email, but like when I do that, like I log in at 9 and I see like my boss sent an email at 7. And but then also I think I've always had this assumption that my boss was working like 100 hours a week. And now that I like can see more clearly, I know that she doesn't. I know that like her preference is to start early, but she often ends early. She's often like the first one gone. And so it's like, she's not actually working like 100 hours a week or whatever I made up in my head. But even if she was, it doesn't mean that I have to. Yeah, but I think that's probably sometimes what drags me down is like, or gets me distracted, is feeling like, why do I deserve to like take it easy if everyone else is not?
Yeah. So Megan, I'm curious, when you first started doing this, when you first started setting these boundaries, saying, no, I am not going to start work before 9 a.m. I would imagine, again, we're looking at automatic mind shows up and says, oh, you're going to look like you're taking it easy. You're going to look like you're not part of the team. What's your boss going to think? Right? Was there fear that showed up when you first started setting these boundaries?
Yeah. And it was like, there's so many like layers underneath that. Cause some of it was like, really feeling like I needed to, I don't know, be perfect when I showed up for things. And that meant that like, I needed like a lot of time to like prepare and like think through all the scenarios. Like, what if I have a meeting at 9 with like, really important person in the company and like, I haven't prepared? Like, what if I say the wrong thing? And not that I don't prepare, but I sort of just like work backwards now and like carve out some time prior to it. And like, whatever I get done in that time that I've carved out, like that, I just have to believe that like, that's good enough. And I mean, I haven't lost my job in the last 2 years. Like, if I have made more money. Like it's like none of these like bad things that I thought were going to happen have happened. Certainly I've made mistakes. I've showed up to meetings and like probably could have been more prepared. And I sort of just have this outlook now where I'm like, everything is just practice. Like everything that I do throughout the day is just practice. And like, if I get it wrong this one time in this really important meeting, that's just like practice for the next time that I'm going to do this, because I know there's going to be a next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle, what did you hear in what Megan just shared?
I mean, there's a couple things. A couple of like little morsels from both Liz and Megan. But what really jumped out to me is this, like, this is my own summary, my own language, but like that nothing bad will actually happen.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
shit will never hit the fan. And all of, like, we catastrophize this ourselves, right? Like, if I have the same problem as Megan of wanting to not have meetings early, and mine is because I have a lot of team members in London and Israel, so like time difference sometimes puts random 6 a.m. calls, and then I have to be like, no, I'm not doing that. And I go through this thing in my mind: if I reject these calls, if I don't show up, if I don't stay late, if I don't write the best doc of all time that makes, Jeff Bezos come down and sprinkle love and money, like, I am not worthy and everyone's going to hate me and I'm not going to be promoted. And then the truth is that, like, still get more money, everything will be fine. And these perceptions aren't real. And it's really just us fearful that somebody's going to have something to say.
That's right. Perfect. Or I shouldn't use that word because that's bad, right? You understand what I mean? What you just said, right? It's so spot on. And if you really start to examine the thoughts, guys, right? Like what Michelle just said, you'll see the pattern here. That you had an 8-year-old version of those thoughts, and you had a 19-year-old version of those thoughts, right? And you have a now version of those thoughts. I have to be perfect, or I have to overfunction, or I have to control something, or I have to make sure somebody thinks this of me, or else. And when you really start to see it as the pattern that it is, and how what Megan, so beautifully illustrated, is that when you take actions that are in alignment with you and honoring yourself, it actually works out better than you thought it would. Mm-hmm. You actually start making more money. You actually start having more of the life that you've always said that you wanted, but not because you're getting it from out there, but because you're honoring and taking care of and validating yourself from within, not trying to get it out there. And to Megan's point, you're able to say, I'm going to do what I can do, and it's going to go where it's going to go. And I'm going to keep letting go of needing it to go exactly in the direction that is perfect.
Can I add a comment?
Yeah.
So one thing that's been really resonating in the discussion is this idea of, like, where do you let the power sit? The power of your own validation and self-worth. Like, are you holding that? And maybe that looks like self-care and feeding your physical needs and your family needs. Are you giving it to somebody else so they can validate you?
That's right.
And the reason that really resonated with me is before the sabbatical, I was totally giving it to somebody else. Like, make me feel worthy and I will overperform to earn that worthiness.
Yeah.
But the flip side is that, like, 99% of the time, it's going to work out great. And I'm like, oh, they do love me. Oh, this is fine. Oh, I'm still, like, doing great. But it makes you extremely vulnerable, in my opinion, for that 1% of the time it doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
So I had a big tech interview right before my sabbatical that, like, I thought was in the bag, like everything was great. And I didn't pass a very early round of it. And like, I was shook, recruiter was shook, and it was this hard hit to my ego. And I took it way harder than I expected.
Yeah.
But retroactive, like thinking in retrospect, I mean, it's because I gave this other person, this random company, all of my power and all of my validation and all of my self-worth. So then when somebody who doesn't even care about you or know your name, right, doesn't give you what you are wanting, seeking, then you have no foundation because somebody else built that foundation and they're never going to do a job, like as good of a job as you.
That's right. That's right. And here's the sneaky thing, guys. On the flip side of what Michelle is saying, let's say she did get that job. Okay. Then right now I call that, you call it ego. I call it your inner critic. It's kind of one and the same. Okay. But that also feeds that automatic mind. Look, I am really worthy. I am really valued. I got that goal. I did the thing. They think this of me. So what that essentially does is it feeds the high, right? We really look at this through the model of addiction, right? You're addicted to that external validation. So when you get it, it makes you so high. And then when you don't get it, it makes you so low. And then you go out and try and find the next hit of the drug, right? Do you guys all see that? And by the way, we're taught this in our culture. This is unavoidable. This isn't personal to us. Okay. Our culture teaches us to be on this hamster wheel of external validation. So this is such a rich conversation today because what we're really talking about is really starting to shine the spotlight on where we keep spinning in trying to get our own value externally instead of from within. Because it doesn't just show up professionally. It shows up personally. If we have children, it shows up in ways with our kids. It shows up everywhere. It shows up with our family, our extended family, our friends, our relationships. You guys, do you see this? And so here's the thing, we really do think, oh, well, once I get to that arrival point, right? To Michelle's point, once I get that money, once I get that job, once I get that goal, that's when I'll finally feel the way that we want to feel. And, you all know, I know very powerful women that have created amazing things. And they are burnt out and fried and unfulfilled and unhappy, right? And they've set out to create their goals, boy. They've created it all right. And they get to the top of the mountain, they look around, they go, really? And that's what we're trying to avoid here. Who are we going to be while we are on the journey? So I think if we're going to sort of draw a thread that ties all four of us together, okay, we could say that we all have this automatic mind rooted in fear that keeps us trying to get to some arrival point that never comes. Would you agree? And that's the very thing that has us neglect ourselves, and overfunction and people please and not set boundaries. And to Megan's point, I would imagine, Megan, that for a while, that waking up to your boss's 7 a.m. email or whatever, you probably had to be uncomfortable over and over and over and over and over when you were setting the boundaries that you needed to set.
Mhm.
So how did you deal with your discomfort?
Mhm. Hmm. Well, I did a lot of meditation, like at 8:50 a.m. I'm not joking. Like the 10 minutes before I started my day, that like
Yeah.
just like everything's fine. The day is gonna be fine. like I can handle what's coming.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like one really tactile, like one like actual thing that I did every day. And
Mm.
I don't always do that every day, like at that same time, but I like would not open my computer until I had done it. I made myself do that, which made a big difference.
Yes.
How else did I sit in the discomfort? I mean, I think that through that meditation, like a lot of the things that Maria and I had been working on were like coming up with different thoughts in my head. And like, I still have to believe this, that like there are other people to help. So like, if I don't respond to my boss, like there are other people on the team. If she really needs something, she'll call me or she'll call someone else on the team. Like if the house is burning down, you know? And so sort of just like leaning into that like there are other people to help too. And I always have to sort of like battle with like, well, what if I'm taking like too much help and like I'm like putting too much burden on somebody else? Like, but everyone's circumstances are so different. Like I know when I didn't have kids, I like really liked working a schedule that went later into the evenings. And so like just sort of like seeing that like everybody on the team has different preferences and like how that all sort of like complements each other. And like it's like sort of good to like lean into that. So we aren't all just sitting around 12 hours a day waiting for like a boss's email.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that what you're saying is that by presencing yourself to what we could say is a higher commitment, a higher vision for, I call that the vision that you're stepping into, right? So if you have a vision, I gotta get that promotion, and you don't balance that with, I have a vision to honor and respect and value myself, or give to myself foundationally what I need, right? Or some vision that aligns you with you. It's very easy, right? It's very easy to lose yourself, which is really what we're talking about here. Right? So without those practices in place where we are really consciously and intentionally directing our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors in alignment with a vision for balance, self-love, honoring ourselves, that's how we lose ourselves. Does this make sense? Because listen, let's face it. I mean, like Michelle said, right? Michelle, you did face rejection, right? The thing that, right, we're most afraid of, like, who are we going to be in the face of it? So now that you've faced it, how are you, how are you being about that rejection? Are there ways that you're thinking about it that are healthy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When it happened, no, I was like, you would have thought my dog died or something. And they're like, what's wrong? I'm like, I didn't get this thing. And I took it so hard that like sometimes I even joke with my husband, like, remember the catastrophe of February? And at the time, it was because I associated my worth as a product manager, like how good I am at my job, with passing these product interviews, because they're very technical in nature. I was like, oh, I thought my whole concept of myself as a professional was like unraveled. Fast forward, X number of weeks, almost like 12 weeks, with all of this watering myself, like me holding the watering can for me, I have a completely different relationship with it. That interview honestly has almost nothing to do with me. Like, that is not about me. Like, almost like when we were dating, like somebody's rejection of you has almost nothing to do with you. And what does have to do with me, though, is like how much I ruminate on it, how much weight I give it, how much power I give it, things like that. So I've depersonalized it significantly, which has helped a lot. But also I realized like there is also a very practical element of like, we want to get promoted and we want to have more money because we want to take care of our families. Like, we have goals and there's nothing wrong with those goals. And I'm really understanding that the more I feed myself, the more likely I am to navigate future interviews.
Yes.
So it's not, oh, I didn't get it because I wasn't watering. It's like, no, the more I own my foundation, I own my power, the easier it will be to be successful in the future. When I go back, I'm going to start interviewing again, and it's not fun. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about that like, I have to have a really strong foundation to do what is a very difficult thing.
Right. You know what I love about this? This rejection could be one of the greatest things that's ever happened to you.
Yeah, I would have just been like, Maria's amazing. Look at this promo she helped me get. And then I would have gone on the promotion and I would have done all of the things I'm doing at a new company.
That's right.
But felt more justified in it because I had a higher title and more money. So it like would have been worse, I think.
Worse. Yes. So here's the thing that's so important, amazing about what Michelle is saying. Okay. So for all the years, no, I cannot be rejected. I've got to, right? I've got to keep going. I've got to get there. That's where my worthiness is, right? Life gave you the very thing that you were running away from and avoiding. And what a beautiful thing that now is, because okay, I can go for my dreams and goals in such a way that still honors and values and takes care of myself. And if I don't get it, I'll be okay. Maybe even a step further, if I don't get it, it's not meant for me. Right? Which then, to Megan's point, has us able to go through life, setting the boundaries we need to, honoring ourselves, really living that balanced life, continuing to take action, but not in a way that has us lose ourselves. Does make sense? It's extraordinary. But see, right? It took, Michelle, it took you literally burning yourself out and getting rejected. It took you facing that fear and pain head on to have perhaps what might be one of the biggest breakthroughs of your life. But the issue is we're hardwired to try to avoid that pain, right? At all costs. When in reality, it's unavoidable. We really have to just learn how to navigate the discomfort when it shows up. Anybody have any last minute things you're seeing, takeaways from this?
This has been a good conversation today. It's really enjoyed it.
Great. Really great. Yeah. I'm so sad to not be able to work with you ladies anymore. It's really been an honor. So just a few things, just so that you know, I think I've told you before, I do have a book called Dethroning Your Inner Critic. I also have a podcast. So, those are really good guides to sort of keep you grounded in that mind that's rooted in your authentic self instead of getting sucked into that automatic fear mind. And if any of you are interested, at the end of next month, from May 20th to 25th, I am actually leading a retreat in Costa Rica for women that are dealing with burnout and imposter syndrome and really wanting to create more balance and freedom and joy moving forward. So if anybody is if that fits into your schedule and you want to come be with some amazing women in this magical place in Costa Rica, you can reach out to me. And, I would love to just, kind of keep in touch and hear how you guys are doing. So, you can always email me, Joanna at dethroningyourinnercritic.com. That's my website. And thanks for just being so vulnerable and sharing yourselves with all of us. It's been a real honor to be with you guys.
We really appreciated it.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you
Great.
so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Joanna.
You're
Thank you, guys.
welcome. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.